Excellent. Well, welcome again. It's a pleasure to have everyone here. I'm Shannon O'Neill. I'm Senior Vice President at the Council on Foreign Relations, and it's my pleasure to moderate this session with these three incredible experts on aviation and on what's happening here in Saudi Arabia. So as many of you know, this is one of the most ambitious aviation projects that's out there today. When it opens in 2030, if I get it right, it's projected to serve from the get-go 120 million passengers. Is that correct?
That's correct. So currently, actually, we have different phases.
Okay.
So we're going for 2030 vision of 100 million and up to 185 million in our 2050 vision. So the whole airport phases 2030, 2032, 2034 as we grow the visitors to the kingdom here.
Excellent. So Jim, I'm going to keep with that now that since you have all of the details there. And tell us a bit about sort of the key infrastructure aspects here in order to handle all of those people.
I think, first of all, we have to go back. What was our first remit? First thing is efficiency is logistics. So our goal is to make the airport extremely efficient, the most efficient airport in the world. So everything, our whole vision is realized through efficiency. Every movement of a passenger, every movement of an aircraft or shipment is designed to be faster, smarter, and more sustainable than global benchmarks. With this, we meet the Vision 2030 goal of making competitiveness and efficiency built into our product.
Great. So Jake, let me turn to you. You've worked for Bechtel for many years in many places, as you told me there backstage. You've seen lots of incredibly complex projects such as this. So talk a little bit about, from your perspective, how do you build a world-class logistics hub, right? How do you think about the planning? How do you think about its evolution over time?
Yeah, well, I think, Saudi has such a unique advantage in that it's 6 hours from about 50% of the world's trade. It's at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. So it's just sort of naturally set up as a logistics hub. In terms of how you deliver, I think it starts with beginning with the end in mind, which is maybe overused these days, but is true. And that really means bringing in the sort of total life cycle thinking. Think about how the airport will be operated. Think about how the cargo facilities will operate. Think about how you will design it, how you will construct it. So beginning with the end in mind. I think another thing is working really, really collaboratively with the supply chain here in Riyadh. When I think about delivering projects, I think about the physical infrastructure, Shannon, but I also think about developing people. And so the opportunity here with King Salman International Airport is to actually improve the overall capability of the supply chain here in Saudi Arabia. And I think the third and final thing is about being really disciplined about governance and baselines. And what that means is from the outset, be very clear about your objectives, set a cost and a schedule baseline, and then manage that really, really in a disciplined way. Because when we have a date, we have to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Andrew, let me bring you in because you worked on aviation projects all over the world. And you've seen lots of hubs and there's a lot of competition out there. And so what are international partners looking for when they look to come to a place like Saudi Arabia? What are the aspects that would attract them?
That's a really good question, Shannon. I mean, there's a lot of competition in the global aviation market. Aviation is booming as an industry at the moment, and KSIA intends to be at the forefront. Now, cargo is subtly different from passengers, but they are linked for reasons I'll explain. But I think that if you're looking to build a cargo and logistics hub, the first thing that the cargo community is looking for really is scale and connectivity. Now, you need a big operation to make it efficient, and the bigger it becomes, it kind of has a snowball effect because then more and more vendors, more and more suppliers want to connect in with you. So then that brings us to the word connectivity. Now, you're looking for a connections to global markets, whether they be other cargo and logistics hubs, because they're mutually supportive. Whether you're looking for other particular markets and regions with goods that need to fly. Now, there's a big difference between rail freight and cargo and aviation. I mean, aviation cargo is not heavy. It's high value, just in time. It could be technology. I'm looking at Marco Meyer here, the CEO of KSIA. We work together on Quito Airport in Ecuador. Ecuador flies flowers and fruit around the world. That's kind of what air cargo is about. So you need to be able to connect into those markets. And once you've got that, that will then snowball from there because you're creating more and more demand. And a lot of that cargo flies on passenger flights. Now everyone thinks that cargo flies on cargo planes. A bit of it does, but most of it flies in the belly hold of passenger aircraft. So you need a strong passenger connectivity, which Riyadh Air will bring on top of what Saudi and others have. And quite often the cargo makes those routes financially viable. So a marginal passenger route with an extra 10, 15, 20% revenue from cargo, they're mutually compatible. So you've got to get that connectivity, and as Jake says, we're in the right place to do it. You need flexibility and efficiency. Now, cargo is a far faster moving world than it ever used to be. Now, everybody buys everything on e-commerce now. If I can't buy it on Amazon, I guess it doesn't exist. But everything is now all about just in time. It's the ability to move goods from one aircraft to another quickly, predictably, sometimes tail to tail. So what you need is a regulatory regime that supports it. So that's what we're working with our partners here to make sure the customs regimes support what we need to do as an airport. Now, Jake talked about the infrastructure. The infrastructure has got to be super flexible because none of us can predict the future. Now, a lot of us do forecasts for business and traffic, but what we're trying to work out is, well, how do we safeguard for the future? How do we safeguard for the unpredictable? How do we make sure we've got infrastructure that's efficient today to do what we talked about, but when we get a new partner comes into the market, we want to be able to accommodate them. And the master plan that we've developed on KSIA is super flexible, so we can respond to all of that. And if you let me, the final point is if you're building a hub, now you want a supportive local environment. Now you go and build a hub in the middle of nowhere, and that's a really tough gig. But you're building it in Riyadh, we're building it in Riyadh, now one of the fastest growing cities and economies in the world. That means you've got a growing population, growing economy. A lot of the 2030 vision is around tourism. Tourism requires just-in-time delivery. Now, perishable goods, they are perfect, absolutely perfect for air cargo, and that will generate more demand. And then there's a remarkable thing at KSIA, or King Khalid is at the moment. If anyone's been there, I was lucky to go around and witness the incredible facilities we've got there with the likes of SAMI, GAMI, MEPC. There's a real technology hub at the airport. Guess what? Technology needs just-in-time, high-value goods which need to be flown, and then whatever they produce with it, with value add, needs to be flown out again. So there's a real starting point, there's a catalyst here. So I don't think we're quite building from scratch. I think we're doing a lot better than that, but I think we can really accelerate with what we've got there.
Excellent. Okay, I do want to come back in a minute to technology, but let's hold that for a second. And Jim, let me bring you back in. And so, we've heard from Jake and Andrew, the specifications, if you will, the things that need to be there. We've heard also some of the vision, right? The movement of people, the movement of cargo, the kinds of things that Saudi Arabia could do. Talk a little bit about how you bring this all into action, right? You're involved in that part of it. So how do you turn this vision into a reality?
I think, first of all, it has many moving parts. First of all, we talked about cargo facilities. What you really need is we talked about the infrastructure. And it starts with the smart airfield operations. Through AI, through data analytics, we're able to maximize our throughput airplanes, in and out of the airport. So that means minimum taxi time, and also what it does, sustainability, less carbon emissions. So while we're building large, we're also building sustainable. And we're also building efficient, time-efficient, smart airfield operations. Next we have a totally integrated ecosystem. We have air, we have car, and we have rail. So what we've done, we've totally integrated all three systems to really make Riyadh a transportation hub in terms of all facilities. We're just not leading on air, we're not leading on roads. We merge all three in terms of airfield, rail, and roads, totally work together efficiently to deliver the products. Once we deliver products to the kingdom and to the global market.
Great. On that, because if you have all of the different aspects, right, it's hard to bring them all together, right? It's a pretty complex system to bring together. So maybe, Andrew, let me go back to you. You brought up in the end of your last, comment, technology. So as you think about bringing those together, what are the technologies today that you need? And maybe as you look forward, what are the technologies of the future? How do you prepare a project like this, and what do you use?
Well, I think this is a real kind of advantage we have at KSIA, because it's very unusual. It's almost part of it like a greenfield airport being built onto an existing airport. So you're normally either redeveloping one airport or building something new. So we have the benefit here of having a critical mass from an existing airport, but almost brand new infrastructure. So the cargo and logistics hub that we are planning, it's on the master plan for KSIA, is all new. So we can start from scratch, and we can link it in, as Jim says, into the rest of the airport. So this airport will probably be more digitally enabled than any other airport. So we can build a fibre backbone, the like of which we've never seen before. We'll have a whole series of airfield optimization tools, airport operational databases, etc. And we can link cargo into that. So cargo will therefore have, the whole thing will be built with a digital twin, so we can optimize facilities. Now we can optimize the way that the utilities supply the cargo, and then cargo needs to be integrated as an operation into the airport. Now as the airport becomes busier, we're building more runways, but runways are a precious asset. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to work out how you make best use of your runways, bring the cargo planes at the right time, know where they are, how do we move them around the airfield as quickly and efficiently as possible, how do you position the aircraft appropriately on adjacent parking positions to facilitate this rapid transfer of goods that I talked about. But if you've got all this linked up, and we've got that airport operational centre that knows what each aircraft is trying to do, what its connectivity is going to be, then you've got far greater chance of pre-planning. Now, airports, they are really complicated places. They're like a city, but with aircraft coming in and out. So the fact that we're able to join all this up should work greatly to KSIA's advantage, because it's being able to do this cargo zone from start. Most cargo zones and logistics facilities evolve over the decades. And evolution's a great thing, but it doesn't necessarily give you the optimal solution. We should be able to do that now.
Great. Jake, let me turn to you on that.
Yeah,
too.
just to come in there, great points. I mean, the advantage that KSIA has, and you said it, Andrew, is that it's an existing airport. Actually, Bechtel was involved in completing it in 1984, the first 4 terminals. So it is an existing and operating airport, but it's also an expansion, as you said. And it's an expansion at a time when I look out across the largest 25 airports in the world, and they have an average cargo infrastructure age of 20 years. So what are they all doing at this moment of time with AI and automation improvements? They're renovating, they're retrofitting. That's expensive, it's time consuming, and the rate limiter is there's not a lot of engineering and construction capacity to do it. KSIA actually has more flexibility. I think the other unique advantage is going back to the beginning with the end in mind. There has been a really concerted effort to bring in logistics operator thinking early on so that it's co-developed. They will understand the latest technologies, and they'll be able to bring that into the thinking of how the facilities are developed, not to just accommodate, Shannon, the technologies that exist today, but the technologies that we don't know about in 30 years. I mean, 30 years is not a long time, really. So I just add that to your very good points, Andrew.
Now, let me just ask quickly about that, and from any of you, is, you're planning something today that, will open in 2030, but this is going to be a hallmark that will last for decades, right? And so as you build out, and any of you who might want to comment on this, how do you make space for what we know will change in terms of cargo, in terms of people, in terms of technology, or the like? How do you think about that in project design? And anybody who'd want to chime in.
A lot of times we call it future-proofing. What we do is there's 2 aspects of it. One is land. So what you do is we just finished our detailed master plan, so we lay out the whole area, understand how we're going to expand the area. So one is land, one is technology. So then when you're doing technology, you'll go through your data centers, you'll go through what AI you use, what data analytics you use, and you have to understand that systems will change. So you build it into your, I'll say, infrastructure, that you get to build, you expand your infrastructure, you build additional space, that as new technology comes on board, you can expand that new technology into the space, into the existing infrastructure, that as you're going, you're not going through extensive refurbished facilities, you've already got it built, you're just adding new technology into the system that you already built.
Into, yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jim. It has been, intrinsic to the master planning effort. And, thinking about scalability, thinking about where the facilities are located so that they don't become, maybe not today, a bottleneck, but in the future a bottleneck. So really being thoughtful about that, because if you look at sort of the rate of growth of global cargo logistics, it's linear now, but predicted to increase and potentially be exponential in the future. And just going back to the e-commerce boom that Andrew mentioned, I think increasingly expectations of consumers is going to drive more and more volume. So what Jim was saying about having that latitude to expand is critical, and that's been at the heart of what the planning effort has done.
Great. Jake, you mentioned in your first sort of comment the issue of sort of the development of people and labor and skills and the like. So talk a little bit, if you would, or others as well. How do you think about that human capital aspect in these kinds of projects? And
yeah, maybe just, I remember when I was involved in the Metro and we started here 10 years ago, and the experience in the supply chain was with shopping malls and commercial buildings, but not sort of public transport, as it were. If you look at the safety standards, basic PPE, personal protective equipment, wasn't the mainstay. I think if you look across Riyadh today, it is. So one project can do that, and I think the potential of KSIA is actually to instill in the supply chain an ability to do it better than anywhere else in the world. So that is the potential of this project.
Something that's stunned me since I've been working on the project is the bright young generation in the kingdom. It's a very young population, it's very digitally enabled, which we've talked about a lot. And I think that kind of lends itself to what we're trying to do, because cargo probably has a slightly old-fashioned, maybe, sort of feel to it, but it's changing, because this isn't heavy goods. What we're talking about in aviation, we're talking fast-moving, just-in-time materials, which quite often, they will come to the kingdom, they'll come into the airport, they may get incorporated in other goods, which are high-end technology, to go back out again on an aircraft the following day or in a matter of very little time at all. And that is a high-technology industry now. We're not talking about moving lumber and steel, we're talking about really expensive value goods which require high-end technology. And that's what you see at the airport at the moment in the surrounding businesses. So I think there's a real synergy here between the industries that exist around the airport today and what we're trying to grow now. I think together, now there are a lot of airports around the world that talk about having an aviation hub or an aviation cluster, and they keep trying to build them and not doing terribly well. You know what? We've already got an aviation cluster at the airport. Let's just go make it bigger and better by what we're trying to do and use that young, talented population to help build it. I think it's a win-win.
That's great. And when you look at other places trying to do this but not able to do it, what is it that holds them back? Are there lessons to not copy in places?
Well, I think part of it is nature and nurture. There are some things you can't just make happen. Or if you do, it takes many decades. Now, building an industrial base takes decades. And the technologies that exist here with the likes of SAMI, GAMI, and MEPC near the airport, those have taken decades to build. You can't create that capability and experience overnight. What you can do is you can enhance it, and I think global connectivity that KSIA can provide will give you that. So I think we talked about, Jake was mentioning it, Jim, there's an existing airport here. How do we make what we've got better? That's the key here. We're not starting from scratch. We can enhance it.
That's great. Yeah, I don't know, Jake, you've seen lots of projects and some that have probably been incredibly successful and some maybe not up to what you aspired to.
Yeah.
What are the pitfalls in any of these that you would avoid?
Well, it starts with a vision. So you need something that everyone from, the chief executive to, the draftsman putting together the drawings can kind of buy into and understand and find purpose. And that goes to objectives then. What are the actual objectives? And it's not just the objectives of the project manager or the customer, but it's actually the objectives that pull in the supply chain. And then you have to align incentives with those objectives so that you pull out sort of the best of people, the discretionary effort. If you can align objectives and incentives at the customer level, the delivery partner level, and with the supply chain, so it's all acting in unison, you have a recipe for success. And that is actually a lot of what we spend our time obsessing about on the project today.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let me ask you all, as if we were going to fast forward 10 years, right? This is fully operational. What do you think will be the most visible legacy of this project for Saudi Arabia, for global logistics? How will it change the world? In a small way, right? No, or in a big way.
I think the first part is you're going to find an efficient, smart operation. So what you have, if you don't build it, then it's always going to be slow and clunky. So you have to start with the right design, with a purpose in mind, the vision in mind. You have to be vision, we want high speed. And I'll go back on that. It's like a lot of times belly freight. Belly freight is high price consumables that, let's say, the young generation, that speed the market. So they want, it's not going to be land and get it out in 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. It's land, get it out, and be out in an hour or two. How do we get the product to the market? Okay, so I think, so we have the vision, we're delivering a efficient, smart airport, and I think the rest is really about people. We're training the kingdom young people to run it. And I think as much as you could take technology all day long, you can make thousands of technology, but if the people aren't trained and the people don't know how to run it, it still clunks along, it's still slow. So I think the vision for technology, the vision for training, the vision that Riyadh is a global hub for logistics, it all comes together.
Great. Yeah. How do you see the legacy?
Well, Marco just I think yesterday released a statement or a vision statement for KSIA, your journey, your destination. So sort of working from that, I lived for 6 years here in the kingdom. My son was born here, and I think it's hospitality, right? It's for you. It's uniquely Saudi, and it's hospitable. It's one of the most hospitable places in the world I've found. So I think that's what it has to be. The other thing I would say, Shannon, is if you go back 40 years, what happened with King Khalid International Airport? Well, you had the construction of the first terminals that coincided with the launch of Saudia. And so you had a very unique period in time for Saudi Arabia. 40 years in between, there have been these kind of hubs in Dubai and Qatar, and they've sort of managed with the technology of the time. They've had national airlines. Fast forward to today, you actually have the same thing happening that happened 40 years ago with the latest airport, the latest airline, synergy, bringing the best here to set a new standard. So that's my view.
That's what you see, yeah. How do you see the legacy?
Well, I think there'll be a lot of legacies for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because now this will be a global hub, and that will generate all sorts of opportunities and connectivity. It will support the 2030 vision. It will bring tourism. It will be incredible. Maybe just being selfish, or just talk about cargo and logistics.
Let's do it.
It was kind of in the title.
Yeah.
I think the reality at most airports is that cargo and logistics tends to be like the forgotten friend. Now, it's the backwater of the airport. It's not necessarily being planned. It kind of evolves. But one of the desires, one of the objectives of KSIA is to reinvent aviation, to transform it. And everybody concentrates on passengers. and kind of rightly so, because that's kind of like, that's the premium part of the airport. But as we're saying, cargo and logistics is important in its own right, supports some of the passenger routes, and it supports the economy. So I think that the legacy from that perspective of KSIA is we're going to do cargo like it's never been done before. Now, this is a bespoke, day one cargo precinct planned for cargo, logistics, and maintenance, but it's got a real sense of place. This should be a community in its own right. Now, I've worked in airports all over the world. You go work in cargo, there's nowhere to eat, there's nowhere to drink, there's no public transport, there's nowhere to go and just relax. So you look at what we're planning on the master plan, there's a public transport spine going into cargo. Now, there are green spaces in cargo. There are support facilities. People should actually want to go and work and enjoy being in this cargo precinct. It's not the backwater of the airport that we all too often see. So I think from that perspective, it will set a new benchmark in the way we deliver these facilities. And I think both these gentlemen mentioned sustainability. So we have huge aspirations within KSIA, and that will be built in. So now, again, we can put all those objectives into the greenfield build and make this an incredibly sustainable and efficient cargo precinct. Game changer.
Excellent. Well, let me, in the 4 minutes we have left, let me just ask each of you, and maybe building off of this, we don't usually think of cargo, but it really can be transformative. How does this airport fit into, the broader ambitions here in Saudi Arabia? How does it fit into, this push for and desire for and aspirations of, economic diversification, of huge increases in economic prosperity, in a bigger role on the global stage? As you see this, as an element, where does it sort of fit into that larger story? And maybe Andrew, I'll start with you. And
well,
then
I'm kind of biased. I just do aviation and airports, but now, if you're going to be a growing, successful global economy, particularly one that wants to get more and more tourism in, this is an amazing country. We all see what's going on in Red Sea and Neom, Trojena. Now, you've got to get people in and out. You've got to connect to the rest of the world. And for that, you need airport capacity. Now, KKAA is a lovely airport. I fly in regularly, but it's kind of full. So we need to create capacity, and you want to make it an easy place to transfer through. Because transfer traffic, then just, again, that's another way of supporting marginal routes. So if you've got a bit of cargo, bit of transfers, and people wanting to come to the kingdom, that suddenly means that a route that might not have made sense will make sense. It will just connect the kingdom to the rest of the world, and that will just draw people in. And if it's we say this isn't just an airport we want to fly through, we want people to come and see the airport. So now, again, there are airports around the world. Changi is the one they all talk about, and the Jewel and so on. Well, we can do the same here. We can just do it a bit bigger.
Great, yeah. And Jake, this is not your first project here, so you've been thinking about this a long time. How does it fit into the story?
Well, I mean, it's a large population here with a lot of actually existing infrastructure, existing airports throughout a very large country. There's also rail. SAR is building rail and expanding. You have rail here in the city. You have growing road networks. So how can cargo synergize for multimodal distribution of cargo throughout the kingdom and beyond? And I think that is really what is unique right now, is you have all these other forms of public transport growing and developing, and the airport as well, and air cargo. So it just sort of hooks into that naturally.
Great. Jim, I'm going to give you the last word. As you think about what you're working on and what you're striving for, how does it fit into the larger story and future of Saudi Arabia?
I think for the kingdom, it really matches the vision of 2030. First, as our colleagues here mentioned, is the growth of the area. So when you're building an airport, build it. If nobody's around, they won't come. So you could build it large. If nobody's there, nobody will visit. But the social economic growth of the kingdom right now is world class. Okay, so we are building the infrastructure, as we mentioned earlier. We have, obviously, where we got new runways, we got new terminals coming online, new cargo facilities all come online. So the whole airport will grow, which allows more people into the kingdom. We call it the seamless journey, in terms of everything. It's going to be high tech. A lot of people stress over visits, so it's a seamless journey into the kingdom. But back to logistics, so the whole area is growing. Without an airport, an integrated airport with other infrastructure, integrated with rail, integrated with the highways. Everything has to be integrated to really smooth seamlessly in terms of logistics. So you could pack up your boxes and put them a nice mountain, but you can't ship it out. But this is a totally integrated plan that puts air, rail, roads together, and really it meets the future demand. The kingdom is growing and meets the demand of the kingdom.
Well, I'm sure like all of you, I look forward to visiting this new airport and doing business in the airport. So join me in thanking our panelists. That's great.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.